What's up, everybody? This is Cool Dude, and welcome back to another Cuphead tier list. Woo! I know you guys love these. You guys responded very well to the last one, which, by the way, thank you guys so much for the love on that video. It's not really, it didn't explode as big as the first one, but it still got a very big positive reaction. So thank you guys so much for that. And yes, if I sound different, it's because I am sick. I didn't get sick with the worldwide sickness that will not be named for reasons, but it is, I just got sick. But don't worry about my health. I'm fine. It's nothing. I'll be fine. But if you have a problem with this voice, then I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. I thank you guys so much, for the reaction on that last tier list video, Cuphead. That was really cool. I love you guys for that. But we're going to do another one to kick off 2022 because I felt like it. I really like doing these tier lists. I like Cuphead. Love Cuphead. One of my favorite games. So we're gonna do this. This tier list is going to be about, if you read the thumbnail, if you read the video, it's got to be about Cuphead charms and weapons, shots, I should say. Now, how this is going to work is I'm going to rank these based off of overall a useful factor. Like, how often can these items be used effectively? Now, before you say anything, I know that there are many strategies to this game. There are many methods that people use to play this game, many methods that work for you. So I'm emphasizing this right now. This is my own personal opinion. If you go down in the comments and tell me that an item is very useful, even though I put it, on the bottom, then not useful, or if you tell me that something is useless that I put in very useful, frankly, I don't care, because I'm disclosing you to you right now that this is my personal opinion. This is my experience playing the game. This is what I think of these items and the charms. If you don't agree with it, great. If you agree with them, great. This is just my tier list. I wanted to put this out there for you guys to see, whether you're curious. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. So, with all that out of the way, let's get started. So, as you can see, I think the tiers are pretty self-explanatory. We got always useful on the top, mostly useless in the bottom. And then from always useful downwards, we have pretty useful, fairly useful, sometimes handy, situationally useful, and then, like I said, mostly useless. So let's get started. We have Charge Shot. So here's how I view Charge Shot, right? Charge Shot is very handy. Very handy at damage dealing. I feel like Charge Shot is very useful in the later boss fights. Like, I use it a lot with the Devil, I use it a lot with King Dice, I use it a lot with the bosses that I feel like, like, once you get really good at shooting in the game, I feel like this is a really good item to, weapon shot to use. But for those people that aren't as skilled as, like holding down the button and, shooting that way, shooting in that sort of play style, it might not be useful to them and they might rarely use it. So I think this one, I don't think it's always useful to me, just because I could see how somebody would not really get the hang of this thing and it would not be that good. So I'm going to say that this one falls into fairly useful. It's fairly useful if you get the hang of it, because it does give you a lot of damage per shot, the most damage in the game. But it does require a lot of precision, and it is difficult to get the rhythm of it. And talking from experience, the first time I used it, I hated this thing, because it was so hard to get the timing down. And like there is a sound cue for when it's all charged. There's like a little click sound, a weird little click sound that happens when it is all charged up, but I never got the rhythm of it. I had to always look how big the shot thing was when you were holding it down to get it. But when you do get it, it's pretty easy. But when you don't, and you don't ever, then it's pretty hard. So I'm going to put it in fairly useful. Next is the Chaser Shot. Now, to me, I don't use this that much because I don't like Chaser Shot personally. Chaser Shot is pretty much the shot, it targets the bosses. Basically, you don't have to aim. You just hold down the fire button and the shots automatically shoot to the boss or the enemy that you're fighting, or the enemy that is in front of you if you're doing a run and gun level. The price for it is, of course, that the damage is really weak. From what I know, it's like the weakest shot in the game. So, but here's my thing. Here's my thinking, right? I think this is pretty useful. Not in the sense that it does a lot of damage, because it doesn't. And not in the sense that it's the most, effective shot at killing bosses, because if you use this shot a lot, it's going to take a lot of time to kill bosses. But my mentality with this thing is that if people don't really like aiming, if they don't have time to shoot at the boss and they want to focus more on dodging, this is really useful. So I'm actually going to put this a tier higher than Charge Shot at pretty useful. And I know already people are going to be like, oh, for you, Charge Shot is a much better shot. I'm not ranking these based off of how good they are. I'm ranking these based off the overall use factor. And also, this is my opinion, so I don't really give a crap. So for me, Chaser Shot is pretty useful, despite the fact that I don't use it that much personally, and despite the fact that I think it is a pretty bad shot. But I could see how it's useful. It's like really useful for people because, you know, the whole shooting bosses in this game while dodging, yeah, pretty difficult. So I'm putting it in pretty useful. Next, we'll get to our first charm of this list, coffee. The coffee is an interesting one. It basically slowly charges your super meter, like slowly, even when you're not like shooting a boss. Because basically how you charge your super meters, you have to keep shooting enemies and you have to keep shooting the boss to get it to fill up. But the coffee for me is not that useful just because it takes such a long time to charge just one card. Card being like one of the bars that you have to fill up to get to that final super. Like, sure, it speeds it up a little bit, but honestly, I feel like you could get by just fine without coffee. So I'm going to say this is mostly useless. If you use coffee a lot, look, I'm sorry. If it's useful to you, great. But in my eyes, like the coffee is pretty much is not that required, especially because there are so many better options for charms in the game that you can equip. So I just feel like this is not worth it. I feel like there's a lot of alternatives you can use. You can parry, you can learn to parry, or if you don't do that, just simply shoot at the boss and wait for it to fill up. And when it does fill up, you can use it. With coffee, I just find that I don't get to use it that often anyway. Like, sure, I'll have it maybe like, you know, one extra time if I am desperate to use it, but I mean, I don't think it's like that like good. So I'm gonna put coffee in mostly useless. Alright, next we have one heart, plus one heart. Now this is tricky. The hearts are tricky because it's a double-edged sword, kind of like the Chaser Shot, but on a different level. The heart gives you an extra hit point. That means you can get hit one more extra time. But the damage that you do, regardless of what shot you have, is reduced. With one heart, I feel like it is sometimes handy. I could see on some certain bosses where you might need an extra heart hit point. Because, you know, getting hit in this game, it's pretty common. It's gonna happen. And when you're down only 2 hit points, and you're only left with that for the entire rest of the fight with a bunch of phases left, I can see how this would save your bacon, you know, going down the line. Because it is possible to get through this, through a boss fight, or through a level with just one hit point left. And if you have, like, all the heart points you can get, hit points you can get, then that's going to be handy. So I'm actually going to put it sometimes handy. Well, actually, you know, I'll put it on fairly useful. I'll put it right there. So, because I can really see how it could come in handy down the line. And this thing is not focusing. Because I could see how it could be handy down the line. So I'll put the heart right here. Just the one heart. Alright, next we got Lobber Shot, the next shot. Lobber Shot it has this weird downward angle when you fire. It's like, kind of like you're shooting downwards. It does medium amounts of damage. Actually, I think it's good damage. Yeah, it's good damage, as the game describes it. And it has just this weird trajectory. I'm pretty sure that's all the Lobber does. In my eyes, the Lobber is very situational. I feel like the Lobber Shot, it has some decent damage, but I feel like the angle really takes away from the usefulness factor of it. Aside from Grim Matchstick, which that shot definitely reduces the difficulty in that fight, and maybe Baroness von Bonbon and a few other levels, I feel like the Lobber is almost never useful. But like I said, it's almost never useful. It is handy, like, if you can get the right angle. I think that's the problem with Lobber. You have to find the right angle so that you can get enough shots to get the most use out of Lobber. Because in most situations, you can't really get that downward trajectory. Unless you're doing Rumor Honeybottom's final phase, which I don't really see how that would be handy anyway, because you have to dodge the fists that track you. So it's not like you're going to have a ton of time to just stand there and unload with Lobber, because you have to avoid, you know, the tracking fists that she shoots. And you also have to get to the other side of the screen when she does her little chainsaw hand. So in my eyes, the Lobber is not useless outright, but it is very situational to me. So Lobber, you're going right into situationally useful. Alright, so next is the normal shot. Normal shot, I'm honestly... How do I do this? You know what? I'm gonna put this... Hold on, let me do something real quick. I'm gonna put this on a tier of its own, and here's why. I'm gonna put this on a tier of its own simply because I feel like this is unfair to judge with all the other ones. And that's mainly because it's the default weapon of the game. It's kind of like judging the root pack compared to the other bosses. It's like... It's kind of unfair because it's like the beginning of the game, So it just doesn't feel like it's like fair to judge them based on that. So I'm gonna put normal shot just down here because I don't feel like if you want to use it, fine. It works fine. It's just the default shot, but I don't feel like it like deserves to have like a usefulness factor of it because it is the default weapon for the start of the game. So yeah, to me, it's a tier of its own. So I'm not gonna judge that one. Probably should have just thought of that earlier, but I don't plan ahead. I'm not that smart. Anyway, next, pea sugar. Pea sugar allows you to automatically parry when you jump. This one I think is pretty useful, mostly because I know parrying for quite a bit of people who play Cuphead is very difficult. And yes, I am one of those people, at the beginning at least. I feel like I've gotten a little better more and more the more I played it. But back, like, when I was first starting out, this item saved my bacon so many times, especially in King Dice. Man, that fight would have taken forever without this thing. Pea sugar is a great crux for people that don't know how to parry that good. So yeah, in my eyes, pea sugar is a very, very handy charm, even though it's, it's situational if people, have a hard time, like, parrying. But if you have a hard time parrying, I think this is pretty useful. It's not, like, mostly useless, where you could get by without the coffee very easily. I feel like, unless you have this pea sugar, parrying is going to be difficult. You're just going to have to learn or deal with it. Roundabout shot. This is the one with, like, a boomerang kind of effect. You shoot it forward, it's going to go backwards, but you have to aim, like, backwards for maximum damage. So, in my eyes, this is always useful. Mostly because I use this in pretty much every fight. This is my favorite shot in the game. I love Roundabout. In my eyes, it's always useful because it does a lot of damage, and honestly, it's not that hard to aim backwards in most fights. It's not really that difficult to do. It's not like something like Lobber, where you have to get into a certain angle, and it takes quite a bit of time to start shooting and really getting proper damage. No, Roundabout, you can constantly keep holding down X, and the great thing about it is that it does, like, take a long time for it to, go backwards and do its little animation, so by the time, like, you're dodging stuff and you're going all back, like, it's still doing damage as you're shooting it, because it's going, bouncing all the way across the screen, and it's hitting the boss all at once, and all this stuff's happening, and so I feel like this is the shot that really just damages the boss all the time, and I feel like that's just going to be very, very handy, very useful to take down as many bosses as you can, so this one is always useful to me. Smoke Bomb. This is another one that's going in always useful, because not only is it OP as hell, one of my favorite charms of the game, before you say I'm biased, let me go over my reasons. The Smoke Bomb is handy because dodging, doing like quick dashes in the game is pretty tricky, especially when you're caught between a rock and a hard place. And if you're trying to do the pacifist rank on the carnival one, it's very handy as well. When you're getting to that section with the cannons, that cannon walls that block your path, without this thing, good luck trying to get through that on handy. I mean, you could use the 5 hearts, but with all the other stuff you have to dodge, I wouldn't recommend it. And Smoke Bomb can also save your bacon multiple times during boss fights, because there are quite a bit of moments where projectiles will come at you, and you wish you had a way to just avoid them without taking a hit, because, like, if you had just one extra, like, little pixelized space on the field that you could go to, then you would have been fine. And with Smoke Bomb, you can do that. So Smoke Bomb, if you know how to use it, if you're the situation comes, this is always useful. It's not that hard to use. Sure, it's a bit weird to get the concept of, but once you have that, this is great. The Spreadshot, the 3-way shot that is very close range, but it does do great damage. This one to me is, I'm going to put it at fairly useful. And the reason being, there are quite a few bosses that is helped by this thing. There's quite a few bosses where it takes up most of the screen, or you can stand next to them pretty easily and just unload damage on them. And in those situations, this shot is really good. It's also really good for, a group control. It's very good for, tackling multiple enemies at once when they're just all crowded around you, especially in run and gun areas. So this shot is really, really effective at that. I don't find myself using it that much, with the exception of a few certain bosses. Like, I use it on Ribby and Crows quite a bit. I use it on Cagney Carnation. I used it quite a bit on the run and gun levels. Except the exception of those times, I don't really use this thing that often, but when I do, it is very, very handy. So I'm putting this at fairly useful for that. Twin Hearts. Now, this is where I put this at sometimes handy. I'm going to put this at sometimes handy because I don't like the fact that it decreases the damage as much as it does. I feel like you could get by with 4 hearts. I feel like 4 hearts is really good. It does take your damage down by a considerable amount, but it's not so much the fact that it takes forever. With Twin Hearts, I feel like it takes forever, and especially if you have Chaser with you, these bosses are going to take, like, what feels like an eternity to get through, and by the time you just do it, like, it's way too hard. Like, there's way too much to do. You have to, like, you have to just be in the mindset that you're going to be here a while. Like, you have to have extreme patience. And for me, I hate that, because I'm not a patient person when it comes to games. I just want to get things done really fast. I just want to just get things over with, you know? So, for me, this thing is just not that great. But at the same time, I could see how it's sometimes handy, because on certain bosses, just having more hit points is just absolutely needed, because, man, it's a hard game. So, I want to put this in sometimes handy for that whole thing alone. And lastly, the axe. The thing where if you parry, you get a little axe that does damage. To be honest, I don't know why anyone would use this. I have not found a single possible way that this could be useful. And here's why. Shooting in the game is, you know, ranged attacks. It's ranged. You go back, right, a certain distance, you're away from the boss, and you just dodge stuff that he's throwing at you and shoot that way. With the axe, you have to not only jump, right, you have to jump and, like, press A to parry in the air, because, again, you don't have the pea sugar with you, you can only have one charm, and this is a charm, so you have to actually parry legit. And not only that, you have to get inside the enemy's hitbox in order to do damage, but not only that, they're still shooting the projectiles at you, so you have to hope that they're not in range or about to shoot it when you're doing it. And not only that, you have to try to get out of the way when eventually, you know, you stop doing the little axe animation and you don't fall into the boss and take damage, because if you touch the boss, then you take damage. And you have to just get back in the zone right away to just fire again, or try to, again, do the axe full of damage again. Even taking out that factor, I don't see how it's useful in run and gun levels either, because most of the enemies in run and gun levels can be taken out with one hit. And those that can be taken out with a couple hits that need a little more than one hit to take down are not ones that you would need the axe thing for. In my opinion, this thing is useless. I don't see why anyone would use it. All I see this thing used for is challenge videos. And while those challenge videos are amusing, and I do admire people that go through the effort to do that, this thing is just not useful at all. Just don't bother with this thing, okay? In my eyes, this thing is terrible. It's absolute garbage. In my opinion, it's the worst ever. It's cool in concept, but in practice, this thing is almost never handy. I never use this thing. And the damage it does is not even that good. It's not good, in my experience. It's just not great. So, with that, that is my Cuphead shots and charms tier list. Yes, I know there's going to be a lot of disagreeing thoughts on this. Leave them down, let me know down in the comments below how you would rank these things, what you think of these charms, what you think of these shots in your experience. But please don't be douches about it, okay? Don't be mean about it. I disclosed in the beginning, this is my opinion, this is my experience, me playing the game, how I see these items, how I see how these things work. So if you have a differing opinion, please let me know down in the comments. I'd like to see what you have to say about it. Even if you don't play Cuphead, if you want to leave a comment, leave me a comment anyway. I'd like to see what you have to say. And until next time, guys, stay cool. And yeah, I'll see you here in 2022. Bye-bye, y'all.